the subtitle of my first book is Small Steps for a Better World. So as you talk about that, how do we, continue to be faithful when we can't see the outcome on the other side? And one of the places I see hope, I'll actually invite Dana and Rebecca to join us now. We'll kind of move into some discussion and question and answer, but I'd love for Rebecca to introduce herself. One of the places I see hope is in our young people. And so this event was facilitated and put together by these two interns of Churches for Middle East Peace and a few others. And so Rebecca, introduce yourself before we go into Q&A.
Yeah, hello. My name is Rebecca Schulert, and I am an international relations major at Point Loma Nazarene University. And I was able to visit Palestine last year, and it was just such an incredible experience. And I really enjoyed just learning from you all and living alongside you. And yeah, I'm so excited to be able to ask you some questions today.
So before we move into Q&A, Rebecca and Dana, I know Munther was at the top of the list in terms of, invitees that you wanted to hear from. Why? What did you most want to hear from him? And then Munther will have you respond.
Yeah, I think a big factor was this book having just come out around the time when we were planning and taking the time to read it and dive into it and just wanting to know more, and especially wanting to have other young people hear more about this book.
Yeah, I think this is such an important topic, especially as Christians, to hear about. Like Dr. Cannon was talking about earlier, just so many people are unaware of the situation of what's going on. And like you were saying, Dr. Isaac, us as Christians, we do have just a duty to stand alongside our brothers and sisters and to walk alongside the journeys that we're both going on. So yeah, we're just super excited to be able to talk with you more about that.
Munther, what would your words to these two young people be, but also to those watching, particularly the next generation of leaders at our universities and our seminaries, and graduate students? What words do you have for them specifically?
Oh, let me put on my collar and play the pastor role and say this. I see that there is certainly a different desire and passion among young people to change our world and to work for social justice issues. And I see this among many of young evangelicals who come, because in Christ at the Checkpoint also, we've been trying to engage more and more young people. And what I want to say is that, please, as you do this, remember that this is precisely the calling of the kingdom of God. We're not simply going off the road to talk about social justice, but rather we're being faithful to Jesus's message, who taught us, blessed are those who are hungry for truth and righteousness and justice, who taught us, blessed are the peacemakers. So when you do that, remember, this is a faith calling. This is not simply, as some would like to say, why is our pastor getting too political or too leftist or so? This is not at all what it is about. It's about doing the kingdom message. And so when we're trying to engage people in advocacy, I'm very much convinced that this is at the core of our calling to be a prophetic church, to be voices for truth. And this is what it means to me to preach Jesus as Lord and Savior in particular. He's the Lord, and his saving vision, his redemption for this land includes, for our world, includes people coming together, being people treated fairly and justly. So that's what I would encourage young people to remember all the time.
Thank you. So Dana, Rebecca, do you have questions for Munther or myself? I see we have at least one question, from those joining us. So those watching, you can put your question in the chat function and we'll be sure to talk about it. We have a few more minutes together as we continue this discussion.
Yeah, I think we will start off with this question asked by an audience member. And the question is, do you think that Biden's administration will help to improve the quality of life for Palestinians?
Yes.
I'll go first, Munther, if I may.
Please.
Just just in terms of the U.S. context, this question actually comes from one of our pastors who is a pastor of a church partner. And so I was grateful for the question. You know, and I'm very interested in your response, Munther. The only reason I'm going first is to say, from our perspective in Washington, D.C., in some ways, we don't think that the Biden administration will be all that different. You know, that historic U.S. policy has been relatively consistent for Republicans and Democrats in being almost unilaterally supportive of the state of Israel and not supporting policies that we would call more holistic, you know, addressing realities of the occupation, the current threat of annexation. And one of the things we've been talking about at CMEP, which is part of why I wanted to answer this question first, because I really want to hear your response, is that the last several years of the Trump administration, there has been so much deconstruction. There have been so many issues that have just, you know, if they were bad before, they've been taken, you know, and made worse tenfold or 100-fold, from the moving of the embassy to the cutting of funding for, you know, Palestinian humanitarian assistance to UNRWA being, you know, defunded. And I could go on in terms of the policies. And we're very concerned. We know Secretary of State Pompeo is headed your way and will be there on
settlement.
the 18th. Yeah, very, very concerned. And then the most recent thing we're hearing in Washington, D.C. is about the identification of a number of these human rights groups as anti-Semitic, Human Rights Watch, Oxfam, you know, that this would actually limit potentially their ability to receive U.S. funding. I mean, and our concern is that all of this deconstruction, we've described it like breaking China in a China shop, that once the China is broken, it's a lot harder to put back together again than it is to break it. And so while we're grateful for the results of this election, you know, we feel like at least we won't have another 4 years of this, which has been detrimental to our work in the Middle East. You know, I'm very interested to hear, what do you think it'll look like? And do you think it'll be different? And what are your thoughts about kind of
you know,
my traumatic response?
No, I think you're right in most of what you said. By the way, a big shout out to Reverend Dr. Naveen Sarras, who asked that question. For those who don't know, Naveen is a Palestinian Christian, I'm sure American by now, pastor, woman pastor. You know, as I told her recently, we're waiting for the day to see Palestinian woman pastor serve in Palestine as well. But we're certainly proud of her and what she's. To my knowledge, she's the first Palestinian woman pastor. I could be wrong, but that's she could correct me. So Naveen, good to have you with us. But yes, May, I think you're right. The American policy is the same. It's now, one thing for sure, it can't get any worse from here. I mean, I think with the Trump administration, we've hit rock bottom. And I think maybe to me, what Trump did is he pushed the fast forward button on American policy. And rather than, you know, because settlements have been taking place, you know, let's not kid ourselves. And other things. So much damage has been done. I'm not sure the Biden administration can correct that. And my fear is that, you know, we'll fall into the trap of receiving some favors from the Biden administration, like, you know, the US aid support to hospitals and to the Palestinian Authority and so on, things that, you know, will make things slightly better, but will not address the fundamental issue of the occupation. I am more convinced that, you know, I'm a bit more hopeful about changes, a very slow and gradual change taking place in the Congress and in the Senate. More voices that are understanding to our situation. I look and see candidates who actually have been to Bethlehem, who we've met with and might potentially become members of the Congress and so on, and the House. So I think I'm often reminded by our time a few years ago, and I think May, you were with us in the State Department when we were told the problem is not here. When we challenged them about Israeli policies in the West Bank occupation, and they pointed to the other building, the Congress, they said, that's where you're building. So I'm convinced that we must work again on the grassroots movements in churches, in community centers, and you know, keep pushing people you elect to vote with their conscience about, you know, about the situation. But again, at the end of the day, unless the way America looks at Israel changes, which is they look at it as a strategic ally for their interests, for America's interests in the Middle East. Let's not kid ourselves. That's the bottom line, I think, for many American politicians. Unless that changes, I'm not very optimistic.
Thank you so much, both of you, for that response. We do have another question from our audience. The question could be for both of you, and it is, what has been the reaction of Palestinians to the Abraham Accords that just came to be this past summer?
Karamati Habibi. To me, it's funny that and ironic that, you know, it's celebrated as a peace deal that normalizes, you know, the result of that peace is that Arab countries are normalizing their relationship with Israel. But what is in essence being normalized is the occupation. That's the real issue here. I think the deal, by not addressing the occupation, is basically saying we no longer care if Israel stops the occupation or it doesn't, for the world to treat Israel as a normal state. And that's very concerning to me. And at the same time, let's not kid ourselves. This is an arms deal. This is a deal about alliances in the Middle East. Basically, new alliances are forming. Sunni countries want to emphasize that Iran is the enemy, and they want to empower their military, and in exchange for America allowing them to buy more weapons, they're normalizing the relationships with Israel, and somehow this is being promoted as a peace deal. To me, it's unbelievable. Listen, we're all for people coming together. We all not just read but hope and pray for Isaiah 2 to become a reality one day. You know, nations going to the mountain and putting aside their weapons. But this is not what the Abraham Accord is about. Let's be honest with ourselves. This is more about alliances and strategies and weapon deals, more than it is about people accepting one another, people respecting one another and respecting one another's rights. You know, I will continue. There will be no true peace without justice. And if we continue to be at peace with the occupation, normalizing the occupation, I think we're only making things worse.
Our response would be similar to what you described, Munther, of while we certainly support political peace, that this deal is very different than a holistic peace agreement, if you will. And I wrote an article that was actually published by a Jewish national outlet that's called The Forward. I put it in the chat about why the UAE Bahrain deals will not make toward peace, and how, you know, just what you were talking about in terms of increased arms sales does not, you know, make for more for less violence, if you will. And so we've had significant concerns, you know, about those conversations, you know, and not only that, where is the Trump administration going from here between now and January? Is this the end? Is there more, you know, as we mentioned, you know, Pompeo's upcoming visit in terms of, you know, what the implications of that might be as well.
Thank you both for touching on that. We did have another question that we've already posted some responses in the chat, but the question is, where are some resources available to hear the stories and lived experiences of locals in Palestine? And Dr. Isaac, I think this is a little bit more directed towards you. We posted some resources from Churches for Middle East Peace's website and some resources that we have, but do you have any suggestions?
Well, let me do shameful self-promotion. Class@thecheckpoint.com And certainly our Christ at the Checkpoint YouTube channel has so many stories, videos, talks from not just the conferences, but from beside the conferences. So that's certainly a place that I would encourage people to go and to visit christatthecheckpoint.com. And please read for books by Palestinian Christians. Thanks for highlighting my book, but there are many other books by Mitri Rahib, Naim Atiq, and others that I'm sure CMEP can have highlighted in the past, whether Justice and Only Justice by Naim Atiq, or Faith in the Face of the Empire. Yohanna Katanasho is another influential Palestinian author who has many powerful articles and books and stories. So that's where I would point to. But as I said, our with if you're looking for something quick, and I would certainly recommend our YouTube channel, Christ at the Checkpoint YouTube channel.
I have another question. One of the things that's happening here in the US is that because 2020 has been such a challenging year, everyone is ready for Christmas to come even sooner. So, we always tease that you're going to start having Christmas trees for sale in August, because everybody's ready for Christmas. And I've had the great privilege of spending a couple of Christmases in Bethlehem, and I was amazed not only by how beautiful it is and the worship services, but Manger Square, and how many Muslims participate in Christmas activities. And so as we look towards Advent, Munther, what does Advent look like normally for the Palestinian people? What will it look like this year with COVID? And as we anticipate celebrating the birth of Jesus, what's that mean for you as a pastor, and leader in the Palestinian community?
Yeah, Christmas is coming, and Christmas certainly here in Palestine, more so by the way than Easter, is celebrated nationally. It's a national holiday because Palestinians are proud of the fact that, for us, Jesus was born in Bethlehem. And so he's part of the heritage of this land. And throughout the month of December, there are many celebrations, usually of all sorts, Christian and folk and culture and arts and so on. So it's not just churches. Sadly, this year, as I said, we won't be able to hold everything. And because of COVID and the restrictions on how many people can come together in churches. So we're already talking about making sure that everything is broadcast live, our church services from Bethlehem, not just to our communities, but world. So sadly, it won't be the same this year. Advent is a time of waiting and anticipation, but also, as I said, a time of remembering that the greatest breakthrough in our history has already taken place 2,000 years ago, when Jesus started this movement, a movement of a kingdom. To me, one of the things I also keep emphasizing is that we're waiting for Emmanuel, God with us. So Christmas and Advent in particular is a reminder that God is with us. And not as I say, is with us against the others, but he's with us so that we are for others. But we're not alone. We're not alone. On this side of the wall, we might think that the world maybe has forgotten about us. We might feel ignored by many around us, but certainly not by God. He has visited his people. I love this verse in Luke 1. He has visited his people. He's with us. We're not alone. We're not forsaken. And he's with us in our vulnerability. He's not with us when we think God is with us. We usually think about triumph, about victories and success. But no, actually he's with us in a cave. out of all places. And the messengers are shepherds. He's with us in Bethlehem, not in Jerusalem or Rome or Alexandria or one of these major cities. He's with us in this unknown town. You know, we would be probably unknown if it wasn't for Jesus. So he's with us when we think we're ignored and we're nothing. I think that's so uplifting, and to me that's Christmas.
I love that. I think that's beautiful. Thank you. Dana and Rebecca, other questions?
As we're actually about to enter into our break, I would just like to hear, do you guys have any last remarks or advice or anything you would like to say to the young people watching who are pursuing justice and peace in the Middle East?
If one of the things I emphasize and I wanted to say by choosing the title "The Other Side of the Wall" is to highlight the sad reality in our world of division. Wall is the world, and in the previous elections in the United States, so much about walls and about descriptions about those who are coming from that side and so on. And certainly I see this here. Walls exist long before they are built. And I hope you understand what I mean. Walls exist in our communities, in our perception of the other. And once we disengage from those who are different than us, be it those who are different in their faith, or in the color of their skin, or in their nationality, once we separate and communicate that because they're different, we cannot get along, that's when, things go downward, really. I think of how Palestinians have been dehumanized over the years. Think of statements like a land without people. They knew that the land had people, but we weren't of equal worth. Think of statements, in Gaza, it's Muslims and terrorists, as if all Muslims, or Muslims equal terrorists, which is certainly wrong. But these are the perceptions we create when we create walls and then dehumanize the other, and we stop engaging with one another. Today's world needs people who are able to cross on both sides of the wall before we are able to demolish these walls. We need people who are courageous enough to step out of their comfort zone and engage, meet people, listen to both sides of the story, challenge stereotypes and perspectives, and build stereotypes, and then also take sides. It's not about being diplomatic and say I've been and I've listened and let's pray for peace. We have to take sides sometimes with truth, and we have to challenge sometimes both sides. But it's not simply about being diplomatic. I encourage young people, whether in the United States or in our part of the world, that you need to go to the other side of the wall, whether that is in your community, in your neighborhood, or whether that is in Palestine, to our side of the wall. You need to meet people that you've maybe felt I shouldn't meet. And remember, this is precisely what Jesus did when he came to our side of the world. This is precisely what he met with people who were considered on the other side, who were considered not neighbors. In the mentality of Palestine 2,000 years ago, we love our neighbor, but the neighbor is those who look like us, those who believe like us. And Jesus precisely challenged that and reminded us that when it comes to loving the neighbor, we're all neighbors. We need that. We need to remove these walls and barriers. And that's precisely what I would say to young Christian potential leaders of our world. Thank you.
And I think my words would just be thank you. Thank you, Munter. Shukran Katir. I encourage people, we put in the chat your book. We'll continue to promote it on social media. I loved that when you first started speaking, you must have turned on a light because you started to glow. And so thank you for bringing words of truth and words of hope and words of the gospel, and greetings from me. personally to you and to your family, and kiss those beautiful children, and kiss Shireen's children too. I miss them desperately. So good to be with you.
And hope to see you soon. Let's hope this pandemic is over. Let's continue to pray for that. Thank you, May. Thank you. I appreciate our friendship and standing together in this. Thank you.
Likewise.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Cannon and Dr. Isaac, for that incredible conversation. We really appreciate hearing your insight.